Since its genesis back in 1993, the UFC has played a pivotal role in taking mixed martial arts onto the main stage of combat sports and has now established itself as the most popular MMA organization in the world. Over the years, the company has been host to some iconic, quintessential fighters that have revolutionized the fight game during their careers. In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 well-known UFC fighters who couldn't recover after taking a loss. But before we get started, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe down below so you don't miss out on any future MMA content. James Vick. If you've been following the UFC for the last decade or so, you probably will have heard of American fighter James Vick. After entering the UFC as a relatively unknown, Vick would quickly make a name for himself in the promotion. James Vick would make his UFC debut August 17, 2013 on the undercard Shogun vs. Sonnen. Vick faced up against fellow American Ramsey Nijem and went on to make a statement in the fight.
These guys don't want to fight me. How many 8-1 guys in the UFC are not ranked? I'm the only one.
Only 58 seconds into the first round, James Vick submitted his opponent via guillotine choke and fully announced himself onto the scene as a future prospect. James would then enter his purple patch with the UFC and go on a 5-fight win streak. Now considered one of the best contenders in the division, James Vick would have to take a step up in class. On June 4th, 2016, this step up would come in the form of Beneil Dariush. Even though Vick came in the fight as a slight underdog on the betting line, around plus 130, most fans expected this to be a very tough test for Dariush. But on the night, things didn't turn out as most people anticipated. In the first round, Dariush caught James Vick flush with the wide left hook that shook him badly. A short while after, Beneil would land another cracking left to an already shaken James Vick. This would send him crumbling to the canvas, causing the referee to stop the fight. In 2019, Vick lost 3 fights in a row, and many started to question his place at the top of mixed martial arts. His knockout loss on October 12, 2019, sealed his fate as it would become his last professional fight with the UFC. Following his release from the UFC, James would move over to ex-MMA to take on current UFC fighter Andre Fialho. Heading into the bout, Vick came in as a big favorite on the betting line, but in hindsight, he entered as a shell of his former self. Fialho exposes Vick's chin and stopped him via second-round TKO. Shortly after, he came out on social media to announce his retirement from the sport. Many seem to think his decline could be traced back to that defeat to Beneil Dariush. He simply didn't look like the same fighter we once knew after that stoppage loss. Marlon Moraes. Marlon Magic Moraes is a Brazilian fighter who, over the course of his career, has earned the respect of most fight fans across the world for a resume that he's managed to put together over a career spanning 15 years and counting. Moraes came into the UFC with an impressive record carrying over from the Professional Fighters League. An 11-fight win streak saw him enter the UFC with high hopes. Despite an early setback against Rafael Assunção, Marlon Moraes went on to not only avenge his debut loss against Assunção 2 years later, but also went on to beat names such as Jimmy Rivera, Dodson, and Aljamain Sterling. These victories would see him earn a shot in the main event for the vacant UFC Bantamweight Championship against Henry Cejudo at UFC 238. The fight created a lot of hype. People believed it to be a close matchup, and the odds suggested the same. In the third round of the fight, Cejudo started to dominate Moraes and eventually took him to the ground. This is where the fight would end for the Brazilian, as big punches and elbows were raining down from above. It was too much for Marlon to handle, and the referee waved off the contest with 10 seconds left to go in the third. Even though he bounced back that same year with a split decision win over fellow Brazilian Jose Aldo, Moraes was still impacted by the Cejudo defeat. In the space of 2 years, Moraes suffered 4 consecutive defeats in the UFC, with all of them coming by stoppage. He announced his retirement after losing to Song Yadong in March of 2022, but only 6 months later, he moved to the Professional Fighters League. This would be a step too far for Moraes. He would lose another fight by stoppage. Whatever he does from this point out is his decision, but he certainly isn't the same dangerous fighter he was before the Cejudo defeat. Sam Alvey. Since 2008, American mixed martial artist Sam Alvey has become one of the most well-known and respected names within the MMA world. He fought across a number of top-level organizations, and he has built up quite the CV. During his time in the UFC, Alvey's career has been very start-stop. It seems as though, as soon as Sam would gain a little momentum and build up a run of victories, he would then come unstuck as the challenges became harder. Amongst his many losses in the UFC, this one may be the catalyst for his downfall, and the loss where we see the most change post-fight from Sam Alvey. On September 22, 2018, Sam Alvey faced MMA veteran Antonio Nogueira. This is where things would start to turn bad. Sam came into this one the heavy favorite, priced around -300, and was expected to put on a convincing display against the Brazilian. On this night, the oddsmakers made a huge mistake. In the second round of their fight, Nogueira started to pressure Alvey and began working on him during some heavy exchanges. A clubbing left hand to the temple sent Sam down in an instant, and that would be all she wrote on that night. After such a brutal knockout, many doubted if Sam could recover and get back to where he once was in the UFC. Unfortunately for Alvey, things got progressively worse, and apart from a draw against Da Un Jung at UFC 254, he would not win another fight in the UFC for 4 years. Since losing to Nogueira, Sam has lost 8 of his last 9 fights, with 5 coming inside of the distance. At 36 years old, and to have suffered loss after loss as he has, it surely won't be long before he either retires or moves on to another organization. Cody Garbrandt. In many ways, Cody Garbrandt is a polarizing figure for fans within the MMA community. However, there is no doubt that he was once an elite fighter. But after he suffered his first professional loss, he just hasn't been the same inside the cage. Coming into the UFC, Cody was unblemished as a professional and was held in high regard by most within the sport. Garbrandt made his UFC debut at UFC 182 against Marcus Brimage. Cody lived up to all the expectations as he put on a clinical performance and stopped Brimage in the 3rd round of their bout. He wasted no time by taking out some of the top contenders and rising to the top of the division, where he would face Dominic Cruz for the UFC Bantamweight Championship at UFC 207. Despite some close rounds, Cody went on to knock down Cruz twice and nearly finish him in the 4th round of their contest. He came out as the victor and the new champion via unanimous decision. Garbrandt done the business when it mattered the most and silenced any critics he may have had going into the biggest fight of his career. In his first defense, Garbrandt would come up against one of the biggest threats in the division, TJ Dillashaw. Heading into this highly anticipated bout, the odds were very close and many couldn't pick a winner out of the two. While it lasted, the fight lived up to all expectations. Unfortunately for Cody, he engaged in one too many exchanges with Dillashaw and got caught with a counter right that dropped him. From there on out, Dillashaw wouldn't let up, and after a few more heavy blows, the referee had seen enough. In such a big fight, with a huge build-up, the impact of the defeat and the way it happened can't be underestimated. Since then, Cody hasn't managed to fully recover and get back to his former glory. He ran the rematch back with Dillashaw, but got stopped again, this time in the 1st round. Even after taking a drop down in opponent level, Cody hasn't proved he's anywhere near where he once was. Since the first Dillashaw defeat, he's lost 4 of his last 5, and most would say those defeats came at the hands of people he would have easily beaten pre-Dillashaw 1. Tyron Woodley. Even though Tyron Woodley hasn't been on the right side of some high-profile bouts as of late, many still consider him to be one of the most ferocious fighters the welterweight division has seen over recent years. He started his UFC career back in 2013, and over the last 8 years, Tyron has achieved a resume that most would be proud of. From 2014 up until 2018, Tyron Woodley steamrolled through the welterweight division and earned some impressive victories over the likes of Robbie Lawler, Kelvin Gastelum, Darren Till, and Damian Maia. The victory over Lawler saw him become the UFC welterweight champion, and Woodley would go on to hold the belt for over 2 years. But in 2019, he would face one of the best fighters we've ever seen in the octagon, Kamaru Usman. Woodley entered the fight as a favorite and looked pretty much unstoppable up until this point. However, the oddsmakers didn't know how capable Usman really was. The fight appeared like a mismatch as Usman dominated pretty much every minute of the 25. Woodley didn't even get a single round awarded to him by the judges. It was an embarrassing loss, but more importantly, a loss he would never fully recover from. After Usman, Woodley would lose 3 fights in a row in the UFC and would make a shock changeover to the sport of boxing. On August 29, 2021, Woodley made his professional boxing debut against popular YouTube boxer Jake Paul, the younger brother of YouTube star Logan Paul. Woodley looked like a shell of his former self in the ring. A once explosive, dangerous puncher looked out of place and sluggish. His confidence was clearly low, and he lost the bout via unanimous decision. Just over 3 months later, Woodley would take on Paul once again to replace Jake's scheduled opponent, Tommy Fury. On December 6th, Tyron Woodley would be the talking point of everyone's lips, but for all the wrong reasons. In the 6th round, Tyron Woodley would be hit with a flush right overhand that he didn't see coming. After impact, he slumped to the canvas face first, no count was needed, and the referee immediately waved the contest off. It was a sad sight for many MMA fans. A once great fighter that struck fear into the welterweight division was now a ghost of what he once represented in the cage. So there you have it. There are 5 UFC fighters who were once at their peak but couldn't manage to reclaim their former glory after a loss. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe down below so you don't miss any future content. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think happened to these fighters? Thanks for watching.